Dave, thank you so much for coming on Fraud Busting today. I'm just thrilled that you took the time to join me.
Well, I'm a big fan of yours. I saw you give a speech last year, and I wrote an article about you in the Dallas Morning News, and I think you're one of the best speakers in America.
Oh, that means a lot to me. Oh, I love it. So we have a mutual admiration society going on, and you're in my hometown of Dallas. That's where I grew up, and spent a lot of time reading the Dallas Morning News. And so why don't you tell us, what are you up to now? And because you're up to a lot of things that I want to talk about, and some pertaining to fraud and some just other cool stuff that you're doing. So take it away. Let us know who you are.
Well, I write a column for the Dallas Morning News called The Watchdog, and I've been doing it there for 7 years. And before that, I did it for 20 years in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And then before that, I worked 10 years at the Philadelphia Inquirer. So this is my 45th year, as a working journalist. And basically what I'm doing now is focusing on coronavirus, the Floyd stuff, and things that are going on in society today. And so I write 2 columns a week, and I'm in quarantine essentially. I don't go out that much, maybe once a week on errands. So I'm just basically trying to be what I changed my Twitter profile to a wartime columnist, because I do think we're in kind of a wartime right now. And I'm just trying to write stories that resonate with people, that give them information that they don't know, and with a strong point of view by me as a columnist. So that's my main focus, in my job.
Wow. So what do you see? Because, we got to talk about fraud a little bit here, or a lot, as the case may be. You've been doing this for a long time. So what are you seeing now? Because, you're the guy that people talk to investigate things. Like when something's not right in society, you're the first person that they may call. So what are you seeing now versus, even three months ago? What's the trend? What are you hearing out there? Who's taking advantage of who? Tell me all about that.
Well, it's not really 3 months. It's basically what my theory is around 2005, the society began to shift to the point where before 2005, you had a better than even chance of whoever you were dealing with, whether it be the phone company, the electric company, the guy at your door. They were probably going to be honest, and they were probably going to treat you correctly and fairly. But then around 2005 till now, it's the opposite. You can't trust anybody. You have to assume that even the car company that you bought the car from, or AT&T, or whoever it is going to mistreat you. And you have to go the opposite way. I was brought up to believe that give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Fool me once, shame on, you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But now it's like, fool me. That's what's going on all the time. And it's harder than ever to find an honest person. And the way that's most exhibited is in home contracting. I don't know how it is for the viewers and listeners and readers who are following this podcast, but here in Texas, if you hire a home contractor to come into your house to maybe put on a roof or to redo your kitchen or something like that, there's a very, very good chance. We're talking 40% chance that that person will take the money from you and not complete the job, because there's no real rules. There's no licensing for them. There's no way they're going to be held accountable. Police aren't going to go after them. And so I constantly hear from people who've been screwed really badly for lots and lots of money by guys who showed up, who promised to do a job, took the money, and then didn't complete it. And this is happening to a lot of people, not only the elderly, but to folks who are younger. But the elderly especially are losing a lot of money in stuff like this. And it's just heartbreaking, and I can't keep up with it,
Wow. Now let's back up a little bit, because I do want to talk about this, because my parents are down there, and storms come through all the time, and hail and tornadoes, and like it's a contractor's dream down there for home damage. But what do you think happened in 2005? Was it one event? Was it a cultural shift somehow, like a shift in thought? Because you've seen the trends for years. So what do you attribute that 2005 shift to?
Okay, so it's a year that I've picked without scientific study, but just based on anecdotal feeling. And what contributed to it was the fact that these guys who do this, whatever we want to call them, they basically began to use the internet as their main tool to attract.
Okay.
And they also began to use Google, which has been incredibly slow in picking up on the fact that it was very easy for crooks to game Google. So that's really what happened. And now Google has started to clamp down on the fraudsters who were using their website and search engines rankings so okay, here's how it would work. You would one of the most crooked businesses in America, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, is garage door repair companies.
Really?
Yeah, because a couple of companies have basically bought up hundreds of domain names. So say in Dallas, you have this very well-known, decades-long company that's very reputable called Overhead Door Company of Dallas.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So these other companies buy names like Dallas Overhead Doors. So they have the words in there, but they flip it. So when you go to Google, you're looking for the company that you want, but you end up on somebody else's website who's pretending to be them. And when you ask them if they're them, they lie and say, yeah, we're them.
Oh,
and then
wow.
they go to your house and they charge you $2,000 for a job that should cost $200. And that's happening in like a lot of professions now, locksmithing. You want to go to your neighborhood locksmith, but you're not going to find him because somebody's bought all those different domains that you're going to get confused and you're going to go to the wrong one. And it even happens in government. So when you want to get your Texas driver's license, the chances of you ending up at a middleman fake site that's not the Texas government are very high. And you'll end up paying for the driver's license, plus you'll pay a finder's fee, and you won't even realize that you were not on the government website because they game the system and they push their stuff up higher. So in another area, like in electricity, we have this website called powertochoose.org, which is put out by the state of Texas to help you shop for electricity, get all the different plans and all the different companies. So what some of the crooked electric companies do is they use the words power to choose in their name or in their summary, their metadata. So when you look for powertochoose.org, you end up with one of the other companies and you don't realize it, and you're not at the place you want to be. And it's real easy to fool people. And just in your life, for example, like let's say you're looking up Disney World. You want to take kids to Disney World. Well, the first couple of sites may be ticket sales for Disney World that are through middlemen. Mm-hmm. And you might have to go 3, 4, 5 spots down to actually find the Disney site that you're going to, because the other ones pack it up on top. And a lot of people don't realize that. They just click on the first one they come to, and that they don't realize that it's not the actual site. So when I buy tickets for a play or something like that, you have all these middleman ticket guys that show up before you get to the box office of the theater. I only want to buy from the box office of the theater, but to get there, I have to crawl past all these other guys that are pretending to be them, but they're going to charge much higher fees. That's the summary of how the deception using the internet is essentially, making it much easier for crooks to defraud you.
Wow. Okay. So then people contact you when something hasn't gone right.
Yeah, when they contact me, they've tried a bunch of ways to fix whatever it is they're trying to fix. And so I created this consumer rights movement that it's called Watchdog Nation.
Okay.
And what it does is it teaches you how to protect yourself so that none of this stuff happens to you.
Now, is that like a website people can go to, or?
There is a website called watchdognation.com, but my primary site for this stuff is at dallasnews.com/watchdog.
Okay.
And let's say I got a letter yesterday from somebody, and I did, who had some problem with some company. They couldn't get a refund on some travel trip they made, and that's really an issue right now during this period. Is people put in these vacation plans, they paid a lot of money for tickets and whatnot, and they're having a hard time getting a refund. So I created this technique called Flood the Zone. And I teach them that what they need to do is complain to these various entities about this company, and the company will then start to get heat from these regulators, these entities, and they'll give you your money back because you're not worth the trouble. Give you an example. Let's say that company ABC has taken your money for something and you can't get it back, a trip or whatever. So you figure out where the company is headquartered, and you file a complaint with the Attorney General of that home state. You file a complaint with the Attorney General of your home state. You file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission.
Oh.
You file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. and you file a complaint if there's a regulator for that company too, a state regulator or a federal regulator.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, these complaints go out, and there's consumerfinance.org, which is the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That's another one. And all these complaints that you send out online, they all go out. And eventually the company starts hearing from these entities. They get letters saying, we've got a complaint about you. Most of the time, the company will just say, oh, this ain't worth it. They just give you back your money because you flooded the zone.
Yeah.
You see?
Oh, wow. And so, is that on watchdognation.com, like that, your whole system? Because that is fantastic, like for consumer protection.
Yeah.
Where can we get that?
This is where the system is in my book.
Okay. Oh, it's in your book. Okay.
Yeah, this is where the best place for it. And it comes with a membership card. And I swear, when I teach people how to do this, I swear them in. I give them an oath of office, and they become citizens of Watchdog Nation. So a lot of people write me, this thing's been going on for now, since 2008 when I created it.
Uh-huh.
So when people write to me with their problems, they sometimes sign off, hey, I'm a fellow member of Watchdog Nation, John Smith.
Oh, okay.
There's thousands of people that consider themselves to be members of Watchdog Nation. And the primary idea of it is that you are the one who controls things, and you have to be suspicious, and you have to be smart, and you have to trust your gut. When a little voice in your head says something's not right, listen to it, because it's right. Something is not right.
Wow. Okay. So let's go back to the garage door people, the roofers, the hardwood floor guys that are going to take your money and run. What is there a tip off? Like, is there a trend that you see for how they're doing this? Like, what do people need to look for, especially with these guys?
Well, longevity. So how long have they been in business?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have a storefront or an office that's physical? Or do they operate out of a pickup truck? On their truck, does it say the name of the company? Do they have contracts that have the name of the company? I always say, if you're going to hire someone to do something like put on a roof, you ought to know who they are, where they live. Do they have a family? You want to research them on Facebook. You want to look them up. You type in the words in Google. You type in, Joe Blow Roofing, Arlington, Texas, and scam. Joe Blow Roofing, Arlington, Texas, and ripoff, and complaints and reviews. The reason I came up with this is because I hired a roofer who turned out to be a crook.
Oh, no.
He filed bankruptcy, and he ended up getting convicted of theft. And I didn't Google him like that. And if I had, I would have found out that he actually had all these complaints against him. But I just essentially trusted him because he was recommended by my insurance agent unknowingly. Didn't know that the guy had turned crooked.
Oh, wow.
Once I had that experience, I didn't lose any money on it, fortunately. But once I had that experience, I began to see that I could not trust people anymore. And I had to figure out who they were, where they lived. I can look up their driver's license and see where they live, and things like that. Little clues that tell you whether somebody is honest or not. And it takes about 10 minutes, actually. It's not a big deal. So you just search for the background information on that person. And you don't just do it on the first page of Google, because a lot of these guys figure out how to game the system. So they pack the first page with good stuff.
Right.
You got to go deeper into it, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages in, and make sure you're not missing anything.
Yeah. Okay. So we know how to research people and some of the signs. What's the craziest fraud case that's come across your desk?
There are so many that whatever one I'm working on at that moment is the craziest one. I couldn't even begin to pick one out, because there's so many of them. And I've written since 2005. I've been doing this now for 15 years. I've written 2 a week for 15 years. So, you pick a category, name something, and I probably have.
Well, what was the one you said you talked about with AARP last week? That sounded pretty intense.
Yeah. It's the Bernie Madoff thing, where you have a guy who totally owns you, loves you, cares for you, gets you to invest all your money, and then of course you lose it all. Mm-hmm. And we had a big case here this year. A fella named Doc Gallagher. He was on the radio. He had 4 different AM radio stations that he would buy advertising time. and you'd listen to him on Saturday, and he'd be talking about financial investments and come to my office and we'll set you up. And he went around the community and he just indoctrinated himself into people's lives. He hosted events. He invited people to movie nights at the theater where he'd rent out the theater. He'd send you flowers. I mean, he was one of the most charming guys you'll ever meet. And he basically defrauded people out of somewhere between $20 million and $100 million. It's a little confusing to me looking at the court papers, how much the actual money is, but now he's in prison for the rest of his life. He's 79 years old. He just got sentenced to 25 years.
Oh.
But the way he did it was he got you to totally trust him. And you thought he was a doctor of financial matters, but it turns out that his PhD was from Brown University in 1981, and it was for philosophy. And I've got a copy of his doctoral thesis, which he called The Concept of Blame. So, and then I wrote about a letter he wrote to one of his victims from jail, where he blamed the media, people like me, for getting this wrong and exaggerating it. So even though he's a doctor of philosophy and the concept of blame, he doesn't live by it. He blamed everybody else. He never really accepted responsibility. But he's left in his wake hundreds of seniors who lost their life savings, or most of it, or part of their life savings.
Yeah, because those Ponzi schemes melt down at some point or another. And I've talked to people who've run them. I've talked to people who've been defrauded by them. So what's your take on the sign to spot something like that?
Well, if you have to put money into something to get it going, that's probably not a good thing. If you let's see, if you have to recruit other people to do this, like a Ponzi scheme, that's not a good thing. If you get a check in the mail that they want you to do, what do they call it, mystery shopping, and you're supposed to go to Walmart and report back, and they send you a check for $3,800, and you go to the bank and you cash it and you send them part of the money back because that's the plan they give you, that's a scam. Anything that involves you putting up money to get more money is a scam, like all the lottery things where they say you won $5 million in the Irish sweepstakes, but to get it, the finder's fee is $4,000. You send me $4,000, I'll get you your millions. That's a scam. It just,
Now, have you heard much about work at home scams these days?
Yeah.
Because I've heard a lot about that. Anytime you have to use your own account or buy anything up front,
right?
Like what are you hearing on your end?
Well, that's just the basic advertisement that says, work at home, earn hundreds of dollars a day by, sending out envelopes or whatever it is. Then you contact them because you're desperate. You need money and you can't go out because you've got to watch your kids or your elderly father or whatever it is. So you need to work at home. So then they ask you to send them money to get it started to help with the supplies. And so you spend $500 and you get all these envelopes and letters that you're supposed to mail out. And, you're out $500. You'll never see that money again.
Yeah. Well, and if you have to give them access to your account for anything like that, like bank login info, and people are so desperate right now that they're doing it and don't even realize it.
Yeah. See, I have a rule that, when someone comes to my door, I don't talk to them because I didn't ask them to come. So if somebody calls me to try and sell me something, I don't talk to them because I didn't want to buy it. I didn't go looking for them. And if you're asked to put money into something, you don't do it. And you just got to really basically say that nobody out there is looking out for you. The police aren't looking out for you. The regulators aren't really looking out for you because they're overwhelmed and they're not enough of them. So you really have to be yourself there for yourself. There was a great Greek philosopher named Epictetus, and Epictetus said, everybody's going to have bad stuff happen to them, but the idea is how do you handle it once it happens?
Mm-hmm. So then, what's your track record on helping people recover from some of this fraud? Because once the Dallas Morning News comes calling, people got to be shaking in their boots a little bit. Like, what are you doing when you get a complaint? Tell us about that.
Well, so I maybe get 100 a month. Let's just to pick a random number, and I only do eight or nine stories per month. So one of the reasons I created Watchdog Nation was to teach people who I can't help with an article in the paper how to fix it themselves. So I have a lot of success with, for example, a lady wrote to me the other day and she said, I got my stimulus check from the federal government, but it came in the form of a Visa card and I thought it was a scam. And so I cut it up into little pieces. And then only later did I find out that that was actually my stimulus check, because the government didn't announce that all of a sudden stimulus checks were coming out in Visa cards.
Right.
She said, how do I get the money now? And so I obviously could tell her to call the IRS, but that would be a terrible waste of her time, because trying to get through and then trying to have them help you and then send you another.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So who do you go to who can pressure the IRS to help you? Who's going to give you that pressure, help put their hands on the neck? And so the answer I sent her was, contact your congressman, because your congressman oversees the IRS. And if the congressman's caseworker contacts the IRS on your behalf, the IRS is much more likely to send you another card, because it's not me, it's the congressman's office.
Mm-hmm.
So you find out who is overseeing that agency or that group or that business or whoever. If it's a bank, for example, that's hurting you, and that happens a lot, you go check out who the bank regulator is. And there's 3 or 4 different bank regulators. There's the Office of the Controller of the Currency, and then there's there's a Consumer Finance Protection Group, and then there's also the Federal Reserve. And state banks are regulated by the Texas Department of Banking or the Alabama Department of Banking.
Sure.
So you don't complain to the bank, because that's really not going to work. So you go to their regulator who's above them, who squeezes them on your behalf. Oh,
I love that. Ooh, that is good. Now, are you hearing, how are banks doing? Are you hearing about them supporting people or not?
Well, yeah,
what's going on today?
When the payroll protection program and the economic impact loans started to go out, and the banks were overwhelmed and didn't know how to handle it, I got a lot of complaints about banks not being able to help people who needed help because they were just overwhelmed. But now they've sort of caught up, and they're coming after people and saying, would you like that loan? Because we can help you now. So that, but yeah, so banks went through a terrible time in that first month, but now they've sort of settled into it.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. I think also this really, I think what we saw with this makes the case for community banks, like the small banks, because a lot of people were able to get their money like from the community banks because they were able to be higher on their list. And where we had the big corporations who were in bed with like Chase, I missed out on the first round. I wasn't planning on getting anything. And eventually, second round came through, and sure enough, I was able to be funded. But man, I was just like, well, I guess I'm out of luck here. And it's funny because community banks are some of my clients, and I just wasn't in their community because they're off in South Dakota or Alabama or wherever they are. And man, I was feeling it though. I'm like, man, this is the case for it. So yeah, local banking, there's something to be said for it.
Well, and don't forget the credit unions. I have an expression that I say that there's a reason why they call it bankruptcy and not credit union-ruptcy.
Oh, okay. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, just the fact that you don't really hear a lot of problems with credit unions. Mm-hmm. They don't get involved in scandals. They know your name when you walk in there. It's just a whole different thing. But a lot of people don't realize that credit unions are much easier to deal with than banks.
Oh yeah. Well, the bankers, I was at a bank conference, I was speaking, and I heard the president of the bank association got up and it was this hate-filled speech against credit unions because they have different regulations than banks do. And I had no idea at the time, but I was kind of in shock at the back of the room, like, wow. So there's definitely animosity there in different regulations, but we as consumers can really take advantage of some of that, and especially in times like this where they do know your name. Yeah. And
you do need to shop. I have a nonprofit, and I needed to move the money from the nonprofit from California to Texas. And so I shopped it, and the first bank I went to, oh yeah, we'll take it, but it's going to cost you $25 a month, blah, 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 blah. So I went to the credit union, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll do it for free. We'll take your money, and we'll keep it. There won't be any fees. There won't be any charges at all. Just keep it here and you'll be fine.
Yeah. There's so much out there, and it does just take a little bit of research. And so tell me about this. What kind of hate mail do you get?
The only time I get hate mail is if I mention Trump.
Oh, I get that too. Any kind of politics.
So I basically wrote a story the other day, which I said, this is a commencement address to the class of 2020, college and high school.
Mm-hmm.
And in the story, I essentially apologized and said, we've ruined it for you. You guys missed out on a lot of stuff. And I attributed to the fact that baby boomers, of which I'm a member of, have failed in leadership capacities in many ways. And then as an example, I went through the baby boomer presidents. So I said, the first baby boomer president was Bill Clinton, and he couldn't control he had no willpower. And the second baby boomer president was George W., and he put us in a war that we shouldn't have been in. And the third baby boomer president was Barack Obama, and he refused to play footsie with Congress to get things done. And the fourth baby boomer is, well, you get the idea.
Uh-huh.
And so I didn't name Trump, but I still left it out there, and I didn't get a single letter of complaint. But if I had actually said the word Trump, I would have heard from a few people who would have jumped off the roof to grab me. So that's really the only. Before I started the Watchdog, I used to get tons of hate mail about all kinds of subjects, but now the public understands that I'm on their side, and there's really no point in hating me, because I'm really trying to help them save their money and be smarter about their decisions.
Oh, that's good. I love that you've turned the corner there. That's pretty cool. It takes time to do that, and really a very loyal following. So
yeah, well, and I'm fortunate because when people write me nasty letters, they sometimes say, I'm a big fan of your column, but on this one I disagree with, and I respect that, and but every once in a while you get somebody who just comes after you, and I write back everybody, and so they don't expect to get a reply. So normally after I write them back with understanding and sympathy and whatever, they kind of calm down and they apologize, which is kind of a cool phenomenon too.
Oh, I love that. Oh, good job on that. So
I was taught to treat people properly, even if they don't treat me properly, to come back and treat them properly. And then usually I can turn them around.
Oh, good. Oh, and I think that's pretty wise, just for anybody these days, because there is a lot of division, and sometimes it's better to not know about it and just have a friend. But it's always good to diffuse things as much as you can and treat people because they're just upset. They need an outlet, and just understanding that
exactly
that someone has listened to them, I think can really calm some nerves these days, because gosh, we have so much to be upset about these days, between the riots and protests and virus and all the economic stuff with that. So
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about, because you have some other cool projects going on, and I want to make sure that folks really know about it, because I'm super excited about it. You're a playwright.
Yeah, as of a year ago.
Yeah, so tell us about the play, how it's going, where people can see it, what it's about, like the whole thing.
Well, okay, so the play is called Eamon, the Ultimate Texan, and it's about a fellow named Eamon Carter, who was Mr. Fort Worth and ran Fort Worth, which is now the 13th largest city in the country. Ran Fort Worth for 50 years because he owned the newspaper, the radio station, and the TV station. And so he used that power to promote Fort Worth and Texas. And so I wrote a play about him, because people here in Fort Worth, everything is named after him all over town.
Yeah.
Nobody really remembers him because he died in 55. So only the very older people can have him. So the play was performed 32 times in the past year, and we had 25 performances scheduled for this year, but they've been canceled because of the virus. We have a play coming up, though, at the end of this month, where we're doing it in a ballroom for a foundation as a benefit. And now I've finished my second play, and it's if Eamon Carter was Fort Worth, the fellow I'm doing is Mr. Dallas, and you've heard of him. His name is Ross Perot.
Oh boy! Oh, that'll be fun. I want to come see that one too.
And that one is now going into rehearsal, and it might come out in September, October. It's hard to say what's going on with the theater, but I'm also writing a book to go with it. That I wrote a book to go with the Eamon Carter play, and so now I'm writing a book to go with the Perot play. I think the tentative title for it is called "Searching for Perot: My Journey to Discover Texas Top Family."
Oh, I love that. Oh, so
I didn't appreciate them, and I didn't really understand them, and I wrote a lot of critical stuff about them in the paper, and it took me this play to begin to understand how they have had such an important place in Texas history.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. We're going to have to make sure we keep everyone updated on when we can come and see your plays. I can't wait, because you're actually because you do so much Watchdog stuff. I don't think people really understand the depth of your, because you're a fantastic speaker. I've heard you speak.
Thank
and
you.
And you really have a grasp on storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
and how to make whatever topic super compelling. So if considering how we just talked about, turning people around your way, and ultimately ending with people liking you so that they're listening and knowing that you're on their side, how does storytelling play into that? Like, what are one or two tips that people can take so that they are more persuasive and having things go their way a lot more in their life?
Well, I like to tell people that I'm the president of the Anti-Bullet Point Society. Business has been ruined in the past 20 years because of PowerPoint and bullet points. And so teachers in college teach students with bullet points, and they read off slides. And that's not the way that people communicate and understand and remember. The way they understand and remember is through stories. So at the workplace, we're bogged down with facts, figures, statistics, bullet points, and PowerPoint. But yet we go home at night, we watch TV because we want to see stories.
Right.
And so if we could just convert that storytelling culture back into the workplace, then we're able to win more fans. And business storytelling is a giant movement in America.
It really is.
All over the world, really, people have realized to reach people's heart and emotion, they need to tell stories. And there's a certain way to tell a story, which is, I call it Dave's V-shaped storytelling formula, where the hero goes out into the world, meets the villain drives the hero down to the bottom of the V, which is the low point of the story. Then the hero overcomes the villain and goes up to the climax of the story. So it's this V. And that's the way most good stories are. I had cat died, got new cat.
Yeah, I guess it's just that simple. But the way you do it with crafting is fantastic. So, people listening that are in sales or in leadership could, I think, really take a lesson from your strategies on storytelling. And so people can read your articles, right? They can read your column online. Where can they find that?
At dallasnews.com/watchdog.
Okay.
What I recommend for people on storytelling is to look at my TED Talk, which is called The Power of Storytelling to Change the World.
Oh, okay. Oh, that sounds good. Now, is it TED or TEDx?
TEDx.
Okay.
TEDx, and it's very popular, and it's just basically lays out the formula along with my personal life story about how I moved to Texas from New York, didn't fit in, and then overcame it, and so.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so it's TEDx, and what did you say? Where was it? Did you say?
Well, you can get that at davelieber.org.
Okay. There's a lot of ways people can find you. You've made yourself easy to find, and they can find you to speak as well. Now, I know you speak on. I've seen your storytelling program that you've done at our National Speakers Association chapter here. What do you normally speak on? Tell everyone about that, so that they just can't help but pick up the phone and call you.
Well, businesses basically bring me in to teach them how to tell their story because they essentially forgot it. So I do high-tech companies, and I do governments that have social programs, and I do purchasing companies and airlines and whoever basically is looking. Hospitals want to figure out how to get their employees to tell their stories both internally and externally. When I go to community groups, and I speak probably 80 to 120 times a year, when I go to community groups, I might tell them the story about moving to Texas and fitting in from New York, or I might teach them how to be citizens of Watchdog Nation, or I might teach them about Eamon Carter and how he basically was this brilliant marketer. And then next year, I'll be teaching people about Perot. So I have a pretty good catalog, and I've gone to groups 3-4 times with all these different stories.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so we're going to circle back around here before we wrap it up. What's the number one tip that you have for folks listening so that they can, I guess, be a super effective member of Watchdog Nation and just not be defrauded in any way?
It's pretty simple. You have this voice in your head. Some people call it your subconscious. Some people call it your muse. And, you know, this voice in your head is like going, hey, I don't trust this guy. You know, he didn't answer that question. But you don't listen to the voice. You go ahead and just sign the papers or whatever. So my number one piece of advice is, you know, your muse is protecting you. Listen to it. Open up your ears and listen to that little voice in your head, because he or she is trying to protect you.
Got it. Yeah, I think if people just paid a little more attention, and, you know, that's what I teach people to do, because the signs of deception are all there. So between just listening to yourself and understanding the trends of fraud, and even knowing a little bit of lie detection, I think we got a better world on our hands, or at least you can make your own world better. So Watchdog Nation, DaveLieber.org. Thank you so much for coming on Fraud Busting. You're just awesome.
Thanks, Traci.